Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this Flames of War plastic tank destroyer platoon. The box art looks pretty much exactly the same as the older resin and metal tank destroyer kit, so if you're buying this in a store, check to make sure that you're getting the plastic kit. Unless of course you want the resin and metal one, but that's not what this video is about. This kit is in 15mm scale and, as shown on the back of the box, can be used to make the M10 gun motor carriage, M36 Jackson, and if you play Brits, the M10C 17-pounder SP. As we can see, there's also a colour-coded image of the sprues showing us which parts are used for which variant of the model. Inside the box we see that there are no instructions. Fortunately, if you're paying attention to the text on the box, you'll know there are instructions available on the Flames of War website and they're not too bad. There's a lot of pictures and it's pretty easy to follow along. A link will of course be in the description below. What is in the box are these sprues. There are 2 sprues for each vehicle for a total of 8 sprues of vehicle parts. These are very neat and nicely moulded. All of the parts appeared to be on the sprues and I couldn't detect any miscast parts. The mould lines were minimal, which is what I have come to expect from Battlefront's newer plastic kits. You'll be pleased to know that there are enough parts on these sprues to build turrets for both the M10 and M36, but you'll have to choose between either the regular M10 or the M10 17-pounder unless you want to do some magnetization of the gun mantlet and of course the gun. The 17-pounder obviously being armed with a different gun. There are also 4 sprues of crew figures, and they're not too bad. I don't really count them as sprues for the vehicle, though I suppose they really are. So I guess there are really 3 sprues for each vehicle. As usual, I won't be using these. And of course there is a sheet of decals. The image here is very bright, but I'm sure you get the idea. Unfortunately, there are only US decals included. If you want to make British or Soviet vehicles, you'll have to source decals elsewhere. If you want to magnetize this kit, don't rush too far ahead. It is highly recommended that you test fit your magnets first. Not just for this kit, but for everything really. No magnets are included in this kit. I'm using these 4.75 by 2mm magnets. They're commonly available through hobby stores, but I believe you can also get similar magnets through Battlefront. I suggest shopping around for them. The trouble is, if you try to install 2mm thick magnets in the way the instructions suggest, they will cause there to be a gap between the hull and the turret, and that will make the model look a bit silly. The fit should be more like this. It's only a fraction of a millimeter, but at this scale, that's a huge difference. For magnetization, I'm using my trusty magnet test stick 5000. This helps me ensure that all of my magnets have their polarity consistent. The way I did this was to superglue the magnets inside the hull. I did that because installing it inside the turret would make it impossible to add the gun breech detail later. This is quite easy to do, especially if you use a magnet on a stick like mine to get the positioning right. The process is similar for the turret parts, only I glue the magnet to the outside so the gun breech can be installed on the inside. Of course, superglue should be used here because plastic cement won't bond with metal and magnets are usually metal. I start the actual assembly with the hull. I glue the upper and lower halves together. It is possible to put this on backwards, and I almost did. The slightly angled part goes towards the rear and the flat part towards the front. It fits very nicely. I followed that with the transmission housing. It glues into place very easily right here on the front of the hull. The row of bolts there helps hide any gaps quite nicely, though there isn't really much of a gap there to begin with. Next comes this lower rear hull plate with the exhausty bits. It's not really keyed, but it is shaped such that it will quickly become obvious if you're installing this wrong. Then the upper portion of the rear hull with the tools goes on. It's got a little bit of keying to help position it properly. There is a bit of a gap there, but it doesn't really bother me a lot. Also, you can see where I neglected to clean up a burr from the sprue. Next come the tracks. These are easy. There's some very prominent keying to ensure correct track placement, so it's very hard to mess this up. I rather like the single part track sets that Battlefront's plastic kits have. They're well detailed and they look good, and that would be the hull completed very easily. Of course, there are some optional stowage parts to add. I glue 2 of the road wheels to the front of the hull. I've seen a lot of pictures of M10s with spare road wheels there, and I think it looks good. Of course, there's nothing to guide the optional stowage parts, but that makes it easier to put them on wherever you like. I then add some track grousers in their racks on the side of the hull. Nice rack. These have a raised guide on the back that slots into the rack, making these, like most of the other parts in this kit, rather easy to position. There are also spare tracks and crates that could be added. I'll probably add those to subsequent hulls. I only built one hull for this video, and I really don't think you need me to show you how to glue those on. It's very simple. Now onto the turrets, starting with the M10 version. I'm building the British 17-pounder. I first glue in the gun breech. Be sure to choose the correct part. You can see how having a magnet there would make this impossible, and it would also be visible since this is an open-topped vehicle. Then comes the sides and front of the turret. This is pretty simple. Despite my applying pressure, there's still a little bit of a gap at the front, but that should be hidden by the mantlet, which is what comes next. Be sure to glue this on the right way up, with the two bumps in the upper corners. Simply glue it onto the front of the turret. There's a bit of keying there to help you get it centered, which I quite like. Nobody wants an off-center gun mantlet. Next comes the counterweight. It goes on the rear of the turret so that it can counter the weight of the gun, hence the name. There are two of these to choose from, and apparently either is fine for the 17-pounder. I've chosen to use the duckbill counterweight because I think it looks more interesting. It does go into place easily enough, though there isn't really any keying, so be careful when you try to position it. There's also a roof part that could go on, but it seems the British didn't use this, only the Americans. I then install the gun. This is nicely detailed and the mold lines were barely noticeable. The end is solid, but it's so small a part that I was worried I would damage it by trying to drill it out, so I didn't. The gun is keyed, so it can only be glued in one way. This ensures that you get the muzzle brake on nice and straight. I think it looks rather good. To finish this turret, I add the machine gun. Be sure to choose the correct part. The two machine guns do look very similar, but the one for the M36 has a pole molded to it. The gun simply glues into the hole at the rear of the turret and it's done. You could put the crew in now, but I've chosen not to, mostly because omitting the crew will make painting more simple. Of course, I could change my mind later, and then it's a simple matter of painting them and gluing them in. At any rate, if you are including crew, I do recommend painting them separately. You'll save yourself a lot of work. Now to build the M36 Jackson turret. This goes together much like the M10 turret. That is to say, quickly and easily. I glued the upper and lower turret halves together first, forgetting to install the gun breech. That's okay, it does still go into place, it's just a little bit more tricky to do so. I recommend paying attention to what you're doing. Next, the mantlet. The keying makes it just as easy to install as the other one. The lifting points should be facing upwards, like so. I then add the roof because I thought it would look cool. It also helps to hide the fact that the turret is pretty empty, especially with no crew inside. I then install the gun. This one is keyed too, though it doesn't have a muzzle brake, so its orientation isn't really that important. Give it a bit of a nudge so it's lined up properly, and then it's time to add the machine gun. As you can see, this one has a mounting pole. I decided it would look good facing rearward, so that's how I glued it in. And with that, that's the M36 turret completed. Here's something fun. If you have any Battlefront Shermans laying around, you could easily use the Jackson turret to make an M36B1. I'm pretty sure you can field this in Flames of War. Unfortunately for me, the magnets make the Jackson turret sit a little bit high on the Sherman hull, but it's still a cool idea, and it would be fine for gameplay purposes. Let's compare this model with the old resin and metal version also from Battlefront. As you can see, they are both M10s, though the resin model isn't the 17-pounder, I feel it's a fair comparison. They're pretty close in terms of size. The plastic model is slightly bigger, but the difference is almost not noticeable. As with any plastic versus resin comparison, they're clearly different, and it won't surprise anyone that's familiar with my videos that I much prefer the plastic model. Not only was it much easier to build, needing less cleanup and filing, but I think it looks much neater and more crisply detailed. Even the plastic track sets on the newer kit look much better. The only thing I really prefer on the resin kit is all the extra stowage they included. Look at all those barrels, wheels, bags and crates, that's great. While the couple of stowage items included in the plastic kit are good, I really wish they had done the same for the plastic kit. This kit was very easy to assemble, and I was able to build the hull and both turrets in roughly half an hour. Only minimal cleanup was required, which is always nice. I don't think anybody wants to spend more time cleaning mold lines than they really have to. The instructions on the Flames of War website were quite helpful, though I do still think it would be nice if an instruction leaflet was included. That said, there aren't really a lot of parts, and I'm sure even without instructions, it wouldn't be hard to figure out what goes where. The parts all fit together very well, and there were no malformed parts or anything like that. It looks just like an M10, like it's supposed to, or an M36 if that's the turret you've put on it, I suppose. This model should look pretty great when it's painted, and I plan to paint it for my British army, but I plan to paint it in such a way that the Jackson turret, while still being American, will look like it belongs on the hull. It might not be the most realistic approach, but I think it's a practical one. I also have the relatively new plastic tiger kit from Battlefront. My patrons voted to have me build this kit first. I rather enjoyed the build, and I think it's ended up looking pretty nice. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. And of course, don't forget to do things like subscribing here on YouTube and following me on social media. Check the links in the description to find me. If you really like the things I do, please consider helping to support the channel over at Patreon. Patrons get to see my videos a bit early, along with some patron-only bonus content, and of course access to the patron-only Discord channel. I shall return soon, so until then, happy modelling and thanks for watching. Farewell.